host, Kevin Barrier, and welcome to 5 Dubs Marketing Pros, where we highlight awesome brands and the stories behind them, and maybe just maybe geek out on all things marketing. All right, let's get started. So today we're diving into a truly inspiring journey that touches the heart and soul of human resilience and compassion. Our guest is the founder of the nonprofit Blink of an Eye, an extraordinary organization at the forefront of supporting families during one of the most challenging times imaginable, the first 30 days following spinal cord injuries, or also commonly known as SCI. This is a story about turning a moment of crisis into a journey of hope, education, and empowerment. I'm excited to learn today and share with everyone the remarkable mission of Blink of an Eye, the people behind it, and how they're making profound differences in the lives that are in fact changed in the blink of an eye. I'd like to introduce to you Louise Phipps Senft, founder of Blink of an Eye.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a delight to be with you today.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure to be able to talk to you. As I learned about Blink of an Eye, I quickly learned about just the brand coming to be out of, an unimaginable event that you and your family experienced in the blink of an eye. And with this podcast, Marketing Pros, we love to talk about the incredible story behind incredible brands. So I'd love to start with, if it's okay with you, I'd love to start with kind of right at the beginning on how Blink of an Eye came to be. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it came to be because of a tragic experience with our son, Archer. My husband and I are parents of 5 children, 5 fabulous, healthy, vibrant, active children. And Archer had, on one beautiful 100-degree August day on the East Coast, dove into the Atlantic Ocean, 6'4", and dove right into a gorgeous wave underneath of which was a sandbar that nobody knew about. And it immediately shattered his neck, C2 to C5. And then he drowned, and people had not actually seen him. And when he was pulled out, the chaos then really began. And that really marks sort of the chaos of our lives at that point, and also the gratitude. So Blink of an Eye nonprofit and our podcast completely grew out of this tragic situation that our family felt so incredibly supported by so many varying and diverse people in all walks of life over a number of years, that it was just one small way of paying it forward for the gratitude that we've experienced and that I have felt so deeply.
Yeah. And in hearing or in learning about what happened with your son with such a severe spinal cord injury, it kind of led me down this rabbit hole of how many spinal cord injuries exist in the United States, how widespread of a problem this is, because when I read that story, it touched my heart as a parent. So, I very much read it through that lens, and, trying to even think about how, a parent or myself or anybody could navigate such a blind new territory. Exactly. that you'd find yourself in. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. But from what I understand, spinal cord injuries, I mean, in the United States, I think there's over 18,000 spinal cord injuries over the course of the year. But what I found is there's not a lot of education on how to navigate that as it relates to caring for a family member that has just suffered a spinal cord injury. So I have to imagine, while you mentioned there's a lot of support that you received during that time, a lot of it was kind of, I would imagine, wading blindly within to the waters of trying to figure out, what's next? What do I do next? How do I navigate this? And how was that experience for you? I mean, obviously it had to be tremendously traumatizing, but I felt like probably you're learning a lot on your, kind of on the go in a very tough time. Is that kind of how it was, or?
100%.
Yeah.
When we hear of other people's tragedies, you just think, oh my God, but for the grace of the good Lord, there go I. And then it happens. And so we were one of the almost 18,000, as you just mentioned, spinal cord injuries that do happen in the United States. We had no idea a thing about spinal cord injury, nor did we have any notion, and even more recently, any idea just how incredibly injured Archer was. He's like half of 1% of the injuries of spinal cord in terms of the severity. And not only were we in blind territory with no experience, we didn't speak the medical language. And what we learned, even in top hospitals, and for us, it was a number of hospitals in the first year trying to keep Archer alive, is that most hospitals, even level 1 hospitals in the United States, have no spinal cord injury expertise. And in fact, if you're looking at numbers, when you talked about the 18,000 spinal cord injuries, there are a little over 6,000 hospitals in the U.S., and less than 20 have spinal cord injury expertise.
Oh, that is a chilling statistic.
It's
Absolutely
a chilling
chilling.
statistic, and that's really where Blink of an Eye got its perhaps the heart or the wind under the wings as we began to have this revelation unfold, realizing that those whom we were so desperately relying upon were only relying on what they knew, which was just a piece, perhaps, of care for anyone very injured, but without spinal cord injury knowledge.
Wow. So after, and I'm kind of guessing on this because for me, as I'm learning the story, the timeline I think is a very important piece of your story, because the next piece was from the Blink of an Eye standpoint was actually the podcast. So Blink of an Eye is by nature is started as a podcast. Am I correct in that?
It did. It really was, that expression, like a twinkle in the eye of the parents before maybe the baby was born. It was a twinkle in my eye, both a nonprofit and a podcast, and I saw them together. And indeed, when I alighted on Blink of an Eye, that our lives have been changed in the blink of an eye, I knew that had to be the name. And so I went online, and this was back in 2019, and I grabbed the URLs, and I also got the .org for a nonprofit that was just nothing but a twinkle in my eye. But what came first was the podcast, because COVID happened. And with COVID, I had felt for a long time, I'm an author of a book that became a bestseller called Being Relational. And so I had a number of people asking me, where's the next book? And I knew what it takes to go into a book like that. And we just didn't have the bandwidth, my husband and I, to do another. And so there was a lot of pillow talk, and he'd say, stop talking about what you have to do, just do something. And it was really Billy's idea that I should have a podcast. And I didn't even know what a podcast was back in 2019. And that was 4 years or so, 4.5 after Archer's injury. And so I went and took some radio classes, thinking I had to learn about sound, and I had to learn how to do this. And so I worked with Katie Davis at NPR and really had an idea of like an old time radio show that would recreate our experience, because I had been writing bedside, what people called the Archer blogs. And they were pretty gut-wrenching and were raw, and they were completely unedited. And our daughter, Paula, had put them originally out on Facebook, but then they were too long, and put them on the Being Relational website. And there were thousands and thousands of people who began to read them unbeknownst to us. But that really built this incredible community. And I realized that when I stopped writing, that connection, the energy field had been created, but the actual connections with people whom I never had even met or couldn't even exactly imagine were still there, but not being nurtured in any way. And then the writings meant something to them because I received hundreds and hundreds of correspondence to me personally about the writings. I thought, how could we put this out there for others? And so that's this combination of Billy's idea, and then taking a class, and then having all these writings. They came to form the Blink of an Eye podcast.
Got it. And so through the evolution of these writings from blogs on your website to podcast episodes, from a marketing perspective, podcasts kind of they represent the evolution of essentially, to a degree, of blogging. Back in I would say 2014, 2015 is really where podcasts started to really kind of catch a wave and would make ground as another venue. Did you find, or have you found over this time, that your reach has expanded through the podcast world versus a URL?
Oh my goodness. The podcast is part of our secret sauce. So initially, I began interviewing people. I was very interested in other people's stories who were behind the scenes of our story. And that opened up a whole world to me. And so the message that I would then tag onto the end really became the message of the nonprofit. And so I saw the podcast very early on as being a messaging arm for a nonprofit that hadn't yet formed and didn't have people behind it yet, but had a message of creating an extraordinary experience for people despite the devastation of spinal cord injury bedside. And as that began to pick up momentum, we had, the first day we dropped our first episode, there were, for us, it was really big and astounding. There were like 382 listeners on the first day, and that's just grown. We're 3 years now, daily, with doing weekly episodes and working on it pretty daily. So as a marketing tool, it didn't start out in my mind as being marketing, but I think if I were to be in your world, it was always in my mind as a messenger of the message that you can be hopeful, that you can create a community around you, that whatever, for me, happens in your life, you're never alone. There's a large faith perspective for me, deep belief in God, and God's incredible universe, and that we're all united, and the experience of feeling broken is just a human experience, and not just, it is so real. Trauma is so real, but we're never broken. And that really was the message of the podcast, and now also of the nonprofit. And I can talk a lot about that.
Yeah, no, that's such a great message, because I would have to imagine in the moment that type of hope it feels like perhaps it's so far away or non-existent, and your nonprofit works with families that have experienced the same traumatic issue or experience that you had back in 2015, and gives hope and support. Talk a little bit about, for those that don't know about Blink of an Eye, the nonprofit, what does what does your nonprofit arm do for families and communities that are experiencing a family member with a severe or any spinal cord injury?
Yeah. Well, we're filling a gap that exists nationwide and indeed around the world that hasn't been attended to, and to me was so glaringly obvious as a
Yeah, it
mom.
feels like a desert. There's in
Exactly.
looking at where are there different support arms out there in the ether, I couldn't find any. I'm sure some exist, but I couldn't find any. So I have to imagine you're filling just a deserted area that needs to be filled.
We are, and that's actually, it's been, I'll share with you what we're doing and also add to it that it's been both a blessing and a conundrum as we have been raising monies because it almost takes an entrepreneurial mindset to sort of roll the dice on blink of an eye. You know, like, are you in? Do you really believe that what we're doing is, in many ways, magical? Without a magic wand, but the support that people can feel. So, what do we do? So, we get calls from people across the United States. Oftentimes, the calls are coming from friends or somebody in a community who may have heard a newsreel or heard something on the radio or seen it on the internet that somebody in their community was spinal cord injured. And so they call us, and we're always looking for that connection to the family. We learned early on that it's so important to have that connection. And we don't, and then once we get the connection, the way that we oftentimes identify ourselves for what we do is we're a group of family members, parents, and lovers of people who have been spinal cord injured or who are spinal cord injured themselves. And we're here to support you in any way we can. And we'll come bedside right now if that would be helpful. It's not like, hi, we're the blink of an eye organization. That just adds to the overwhelm of trauma. And so we are able to reach families within hours and then oftentimes bedside within days. And they're able to tell us, and some will weep and say, can you come tomorrow? And we say, yes. Or they'll say, our family's here, but they're going to be peeling out, probably in 3 days or 5 days. Could you come then? We say, yes. And so we go bedside and we go all over the country and we stay the day with a family and we bring spinal cord injury expertise that is not just lived experience from one of our navigators, but we bring a relational response because all of our HEAL team, those are our rapid response team members, as well as our navigators. And our navigators are people who work with our spinal cord injured families intensively, 24/7 for the first 30 days. We're all trained in what Baltimore Mediation has been doing for 30 years, which is a relational approach to conflict and crisis. And so everyone is trained as a little mediator. And so intervening in a way to empower and to offer opportunities for recognition. So it's never a alignment with or doing it for other people. It's a listening deeply and knowing that their expertise is there. We'll just sort of entice it and tickle it out, and how they can see themselves as partners with the medical team who might not have the information that the family is about to have because of blink of an eye, because we're able to give spinal cord injury expert information medically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually to families immediately. And from that platform, they're able to then call upon us for all of the decision making that they might want some support or help with, or when they feel like they're about to collapse, or when depression might set in, or when there's a differing medical opinion, or when they're fighting for something that needs to happen in spinal cord injury, but the medical team doesn't know basic things like rotating the body every 2 hours and getting the body up so the central nervous system can re-regulate within hours of injury and of surgery. So
Wow.
it has all kinds of components, and our navigators are the most tremendous people, and they're all supported by a wraparound team of experts, namely a spinal cord injury medical expert team, bar none, in the country from all over, from our SCI surgeons, 2 of the top 10 surgeons in the country, neuro, pulmonologist, neuro, urologist, PT. We've just got some incredible people, and not to mention others on the wraparound team in insurance and in insurance appeals and in patient advocacy and in ADA and in home construction and in integrative health and in breath work. And so it's a number of people pulled together to assist each family. And then we stay with them for the first miracle year at all the transitions whenever they need us. And that's what
And
Blink of
many,
an Eye is about.
wow, and many transitions you've shared there are. There are so many things to think about that in listening here, I would have never imagined. Home construction, right? How do you have the home? How do you make the home, a suitable and functional space? Now, one thing you mentioned earlier, I heard you echo it in a little bit. You said that you and your team help mediate, and I hope it's okay. But it's a fun fact I think about Louise is that you not only are an attorney, but you're also a nationally recognized mediator as well. Can you talk a little bit about having that skill set that was kind of the native? I would imagine that was your skill set prior to Archer's injury. How have you weaved that skill set into the blink of an eye to help further support those who you support?
Thank you for asking that, because it actually is the foundation for how we do everything. The why, of course, is to bring hope and the most cutting edge spinal cord injury knowledge bedside. But the how we do it is all informed by relational conflict theory. And that at the time when Archer was injured, I had 22 years of teaching and also in some wonderful institutions at Harvard's law school, at Maryland's law school, 20 at that time, 20 years. And Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School. It's really been an incredible run of teaching, and to realize that we had everything we needed. We just needed to give this skill set to our navigators who could then coach and impart it upon our families. Because when you talked about, Kevin, being in the desert and this navigation piece and, where do you turn, what do you do, etc., we know that no one's expected to know what to do or know what to say. And so our navigators with a relational approach are also trauma informed. So we now are creating this incredible mediation, a tapestry that has an understanding of trauma and trauma healing thread throughout. And so it's the secret sauce of really what we bring, because it's not just people with real lived experience sharing their stories, which is valuable, or who can listen, which is valuable, but it's very highly trained people who bring their personal experience so that their experience never undermines or supplants the decision-making or experience of each of the unique families. And spinal cord injuries are quite unique unto themselves, each one like a snowflake, that we would never rob a family of what is best for them simply because of something that may have been best for us that might not be the same. And that's really part of a relational approach. And that's part of the healing, to really understand and to deeply feel into another person's experience, and then to very proactively and with a good, strong, head on your shoulders, help them to navigate and get the information that they need. That includes things like, how do you have a conversation with a physical therapist or with a nurse about something that's really not being done well and you know better? How do you make a request when you've made it 10 times and now you are wondering, you're banging your head up against the hospital system's wall? How do you partner with? How do you stand up for yourself? As well as how do you manage all the friends who want to help you? How do you say, we're vegans and we love the lasagnas that you're sending, but if they could be meatless. I mean, it's all over the place for empowering families to manage their lives in a way that is not adding to the trauma that they're already experiencing related to spinal cord injury.
And what I really love about that is that, and I can't help but to put myself in, or at least try to, and I know it would pale in comparison, but put myself in the shoes of like, what if this happened to my child, right? And I'm navigating this. I can't imagine I would be able to think straight, and to hear how many T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and how you're using your holistic skill set and experience to really give such an amazing value and support to families when they're at their most vulnerable is just, it's one of those rare stories in a very crazy world right now where it really just, it does make you feel good. So I feel like, thank you for everything that you do for those that are the most vulnerable. But I can imagine, as the blink of an eye continues to grow, I'm sure there have been struggles, that you've come across. You mentioned conundrums earlier. Talk to me a little bit about, an example of just one of those really nuisance conundrums or struggles that that you experienced, but you've been able to overcome.
Oh my goodness. There have been many.
And where do we start, right?
Yeah. And
That's
also
right.
we haven't overcome all of them, but
Sure.
once, if we are truly filling a gap, and then when through strokes of good fortune and blessing and hard work, we have partnerships with amazing people like the Nielsen Foundation funding us, the local Weinberg Foundation funding and believing in us, and with United Spinal Association, United Spine, that tells all of its members where our conundrum is, oh my gosh, they get it because they're in the spinal cord injury world, that there is this gap that's existed for so long and nobody's addressed it. And now blink of an eye is doing it, but it's like the floodgates can open. And so how do we scale? If we can't get to all the 18,000 injuries, and we might not ever hear about them all, how do we maximize this incredible heart of energy and passion and faith and love and spinal cord injury expertise that families and medical teams need? So one of the ways that we have cracked that nut is I thought we should have a digital resource library. And it will be, the essential, everything you need to know about spinal cord injury, but it will be relationally informed. So the trauma-informed relational piece is to never, ever add to the overwhelm experience as best you can or how. And so
Sure.
it won't be a library that is deep with, link after link after link and getting lost, and what you're really looking for you can't find. And now you run out of time and you've got it won't be that. It won't be information overload. It will be, who are you, a family member, a friend of a family, or are you a member of a medical team? And we'll ask a little bit more about you. It's under construction, and we're really looking now for the best and the brightest who can help us construct this. So from a marketing perspective, we see that each of the pages will be phenomenal because it will be looked at probably from people around the world, across the globe, as I have guests on the podcast who are from around the world. And we know that it will have a broad reach. So we want to do it really well, but it helps to crack that nut on the conundrum for us when we want to pay it forward for so many to be able to say, here's what our navigators are learning and from their own lives. And here's what they're learning from interfacing up close and personal with other spinal cord injured families. And we will put that in little clips and YouTube videos and protocols for what you need to say, what you need to think about. Here's what's coming up, what you don't need to be concerned about. And I'll give an example for a friend. We'll have a YouTube like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I was a friend of blankety blank whose son was injured in whatever, 2022. And I thought I was being helpful to my friend, texting her every day saying, how are you? But in fact, I've learned that just adds to the experience of trauma and overwhelm. So now what I've learned to do is I text my friend, and you can text yours too, saying, I'm thinking of you. Here's a beautiful picture for your day and a picture of nature. I'm thinking of you, and I'm holding you in the light. And another picture that is a faith, one of spirit. Or I love you, and I'm saying a prayer for you, and a picture of scripture. That's the kind of support that friends can do. So we'll have examples like that, and examples of how friends can help create, for instance, GoFundMe pages that don't also fly in the face or get in the way of a spinal cord injured person being eligible for Medicaid, for instance. So just everything practical that you just don't get anywhere else on the internet, all sourced in one place. And so, other partners can join us. We just want it to be really great, and we want to have an amazing design and digital team working on that. So we hope to roll out phase 1 of that in Q1 of this year, 2024.
I love that. And I love not only the idea of having these resources available because, spinal cord injuries don't just happen in the United States. It's a worldly, issue. But you having from a marketing side of things, now the gears are spinning in my mind, because I love that you're looking at it in a way of, we don't want to pile on the amount of work that someone who is, in the thick of just darkness, perhaps because they're facing this experience, you want it to lighten the load, and so thinking about like the user interface and user experience behind that is I think is an unsung hero here. The first thing that comes to mind for me is a quiz. You mentioned like, who are you? Are you a medical provider? Are you a family member? Or are you a friend? And kind of having that if then dictate, it almost feels like kind of like the like a quiz almost.
Yeah.
And it helps navigate them to the appropriate resources. I love that.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
As easy as possible, and also open.
Yeah.
They might want to walk in the shoes as if they were a medical team member when they're not, or if they were a family member, like, what's this like for my friends? Because it will also have that component, like through the lens, walking in the shoes, the moccasins of the other. And,
Sure.
I've got to say something else that's really coming to my mind right now from what you just shared with us, Kevin, about your background. The podcast just remains remarkable for us because as our reach has grown, and we were listed as a top 15 podcast in the world on spinal cord injury, I have the honor to be able to interview people in the spinal cord injury world, but also in the trauma healing world that is certainly not limited in any way, shape, or form to spinal cord injury. It's very universal. And these amazing, remarkable people I never imagined would and have become, many of them, our calling card, because they've opened up doors to other people whom they wanted, blink of an eye, to know. They share our podcast because it's good for them with their clients or their people. They also have been remarkable because they've gotten their institutions partnered when we never imagined it, but we pulled together spinal cord injury stakeholders, which included the integrative health and the trauma healers as well, even though they may not have had specific spinal cord injury experience. And from that grew other partners for Blink of an Eye. And it's really been so exciting because we then realized what we could do that was also so what listeners loved when Blink of an Eye podcast first came out was the origin story. And of course, we've morphed into trauma healing learnings and into the Dear Louise series with other spinal cord injured heroes and innovators. We are coming back, like, full circle in our season 5, which will start up in about a month or so. And we're going to do an amalgamation now of other spinal cord injury heroes, their arc of their origin story, and then other healers, as well as medical professionals and EMS workers, or, the gentleman whom I was just interviewing today from Germany, one of his main issues in his story was the flying when you are spinal cord injured, and how difficult that is and can be. And so I'm going to get, a flight attendant or somebody from one of the main airlines on, and it will just provide a much wider lens, not only for spinal cord injured people to be able to think about and then be available for others whom they might hear about, but the disability world generally. As we really open our eyes and our lenses, we who are so vibrant and active, right, and healthy, to things that can happen in the blink of an eye and all the cascading impact and effects of that one might not ever imagine. And then in doing that story arc, if you will, the new season 5, we will have even more amazing information and people for the digital resource library, the essential SCI resource. So
Wow.
it's all from the relational platform for how to help other people, and in turn, we help ourselves.
There's it's incredible to see how many moving parts exist. And one thing I've thought of, and I don't know, maybe this is a selfish thing on my part, but in hearing about these experiences, it's providing me a lesson of, taking a step back and appreciating and being grateful for good health, but also understanding that anything can happen in this world. Now, you mentioned you mentioned that there's partners that exist out there. In season 5 of your podcast, you'll be talking about other spinal cord injury heroes, origin stories and things like that. For those that want to that want to partner with Blink of an Eye, because I think we've just proved here that Blink of an Eye is the gold standard of spinal cord injury support, amongst so many other things, and even traumatic injury support, things like that. How can those that want to contribute or partner with you, how does that work? How can they partner? What are you looking for in terms of partnerships to help better meet a need? What does that look like for Blink of an Eye?
Yeah, thank you. For anyone who wants to join us, and I appreciate the nod, we are and hope that we will continue to create the gold standard for families, for spinal cord injured families, and for medical teams. So how people could partner, I mean, of course, any nonprofit has a website, and ours is blinkofan.org. And it's not the blink of an eye, just blinkofan.org.
Blinkofan.org.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And of course, there's a donation button. We really are looking for partners. We love, people who are Patreon, patrons on Patreon and doing their $10 a month. Those are all lovely. And people who send us checks for $25 and $100. We love you. We are looking for partners who believe in the mission to be able to sponsor episodes of the podcast, because the reach is now, it's growing, and without having to go out and continue asking for sponsors, because we haven't. It's been a real labor of love, and the trustees at Blink of an Eye have been behind the sponsorship of Blink of an Eye podcast. And so a way to partner with us is to reach out to me directly or to my co-producer, Mike Sermon, and Louise at blinkofan.org, or Mike at blinkofan.org. And you can find either one of us. We're also really looking for partners and sponsors who want to help us build the infrastructure so we can continue with our training and we can have a support system for our support system. So much of what we do is also around logistics. So people who have a logistics background and can help to, we also believe in efficiency, but never at the price of compassion. And so we will go the extra mile. And so if you want to sponsor a family, while it costs much more than $2,500 each time we go to see a family and work with the family for 30 days, not to mention the staff that we have internally whom we need to support with unrestricted dollars, but you could sponsor a family for $2,500. You could also have a family foundation to really think about or believe in us, whether it's from a spiritual perspective, or it's from a humanitarian perspective, or it's from a healthcare perspective, to please consider us for your $25,000 and $50,000 and $100,000 gifts, because that's what cumulatively makes Blink of an Eye move forward. And we did all of our work for the first year and a half, almost into 2 years, with almost nothing. So
yeah, that's humbling, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a very humbling experience as a part of a nonprofit myself. It's, we've gotten very good at crossing our T's and dotting our I's and making the dollar go the farthest we can. But you heard it here first, because your audience, so there's so many ways that people can contribute, but even, let's just say the podcast, the audience that your podcast reach is so high quality in terms of its niche, right? So if, for any organization that's looking to reach anyone that has a connection to SCI, Blink of an Eye podcast is a great solution. So we'll make sure that your co-producer's information is in the show notes.
That would be great. I want to add something to that, if I may. A most remarkable thing happened a week or two ago on that note of what you just said. So we are a go-to spinal cord injury podcast, and we like to highlight other go-to spinal cord injury podcasts, and indeed have had the founders and guests of others like WAGS and High Five and Unite to Fight the Cure and Find the Cure, Unite to Fight. It's really been a joy. But what happened a couple months ago is I received a call from one of the 18 model spinal cord injury rehab facilities in the U.S. There are only 18. And it was the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago. Reached out because one of our Blink families was rehabbing there. And they were the single site of the NerveGen trials. Now, NerveGen is like the latest, been all over the news for being one of the first non-invasive trials for advancing levels of usage again for spinal cord injured people. And they had a trial going. The single site was Shirley Ryan, and Shirley Ryan reached out and said, we heard about Blink of an Eye. We had not known of Blink of an Eye. Would you be willing to help us get people into this trial, because so many people were applying and not meeting the criteria? So we boned up very quickly on the criteria. We were absolutely delighted. Couldn't imagine it being any better for our spinal cord injured families whom we'd been serving for the last 2.5 years. And indeed, one of our families has started the trial. 3 others are qualifying. And what happened is I then, with the podcast, said to the program manager at the Shirley Ryan, would you like to be a guest on Blink? And she spoke with the head physician scientist who oversees it all, Dr. Monica Perez, who got permission, and we did a podcast. It was really great. We dropped it, published it the Wednesday before Christmas. And what happened is that it got picked up on Reddit, and like every word that each of us spoke was like dissected. And Blink of an Eye nonprofit was also listed, of course, and it was in the chat room of the International Stock Exchange. So,
wow,
there was an
I just got
impact.
goosebumps.
Yeah, and it's amazing because we know that Blink of an Eye and what we are doing bedside, and then of course through phone and text and FaceTime for the next 30 days, and then the next year with each family. We know that it has ripple impacts. We want to research that, and we are looking for research grant opportunities right now, and actually looking for a PI right now in spinal cord injury to partner with us on our efficacy. But with the nerve gen, we know that whether it's nerve gen or whether it's any other cutting edge, non-invasive trial, that we're the conduit. We will be the matchmaker to get that information that otherwise people in the hospitals would probably never know about it. Once it gets approved, 7 years, 21 years, with the length of time it takes for new devices and medications to go through the regular FDA process, we're able to offer this to families. And of course, it's done through the relational way. Maybe not, but to be informed.
What a great case study at the power and the effectiveness of the reach that Blink of an Eye has. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I could talk to you all day about this, but our time is coming to an end. Yeah. What is before in a minute or so, for, let's say there's a nonprofit out there that wants to get started and they're kind of navigating their way, what would be one piece of advice that, as someone who is running a nonprofit and founding a nonprofit, what would be a piece of advice you'd give to someone who's looking to start a nonprofit, whatever that nonprofit may be?
Well, I think it's not a piece of advice that I had the luxury of being able to benefit from, but I have since learned that so many nonprofits start with a pretty large chunk of money. I've also learned, however, that about 80%, if not higher, of nonprofits across the U.S. Never have more than one staff member, and usually have a budget that doesn't ever exceed $50,000. So we didn't fall in any of those categories. But I will say that the other tip is that if you're thinking about forming a nonprofit, do it with all your heart. Allow your imagination to run, and then get focused. And don't let anyone damper your wild imagination and your crazy dreams, because you can start with one small corner of the world, just like any woman who has won the Nobel Peace Prize. They started with their one small corner of the world. And for me, that was a relational corner in spinal cord injury. So
allow your imagination to run and get focused. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Thank you. And that applies so broadly in just who we are and what we do. Thank you so much for that, Louise. I am so honored to be able to speak to you and share your story and your message out there. For everyone that's listening, blinkofan.org. Check out Blink of an Eye podcast. Consider giving back to such a great organization, and definitely check out their podcast as well.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It has absolutely been a joy.
Absolutely. Well, that does it for this episode of Marketing Pros. And check out 5-dubs.com or anywhere you get your podcast to find all of our episodes. And also, while you're doing that, find Blink of an Eye podcast as well. Louise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Blessings to you.
Five Dubs Marketing Pros is hosted by me, Kevin Barrier. Our executive producer is MDDC Executive Director Rebecca Snyder. Post-production by Caroline Pecora. Our theme music is by Azulu Studio. A special thank you to our guests for being with us. You can find Five Dubs and Five Dubs Marketing Pros on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast.